Hi students, this week we're talking about the 14th century, which is a pretty pivotal century in the history of Western civilization. It's where we see a lot of the aspects of medieval culture that have become established over the previous centuries start to be challenged and start to fade away, and new cultural structures are going to start to come into place. The engine for some of these changes to take place, for the initial changes to take place, actually comes from way outside Europe and the Mediterranean. It comes from the Asian steppe north of China, the land of Mongolia. And previously, this land had been inhabited by warring tribes among the Mongols, and they had scratched out a nomadic living across the steppe. However, they benefit, as does medieval Europe, from the changing climate that takes place or that's experienced across the world from the 10th through the 12th centuries. And this changing climate is called the medieval warming period. It's a period during which global temperatures rise. And this means that there's more food for the Mongols, and their populations start to grow and to become more stable. However, in addition to achieving a more stable population, in the early 13th century, they also acquire a leader, a great leader, Genghis Khan, who's able to unite them. And Genghis Khan's great achievement is uniting the Mongols and forming them into an army that can take on basically anyone throughout the world. And so it's under Genghis Khan that we're going to see a Mongol army formed that is highly mobile, because these people are still used to living a nomadic lifestyle. It's thoroughly meritocratic, but it's also technologically advanced because of the Mongols' close proximity to China. That meant that the Mongols were able to take and use Chinese technology that the Chinese had used in a pretty insular way. The Mongols are going to take that and build an enormous empire. And so beginning around 1206, for the next 50 years, we're going to see Mongol victory after Mongol military victory and Mongol conquest throughout Asia. And these conquests are often accompanied by brutal sacks and slaughters of the cities that they conquered, so that the Mongols became feared throughout Europe and Asia. And as you can see when you look at the PowerPoint this week, the Mongols are going to form an empire that's going to be the largest contiguous land empire in the history of the world, that spans all of China, Central Asia, and extends into the Middle East. The most important conquest that's carried out by the Mongols, probably the most important conquest, at least for the immediate history of Western civilization, is the conquest of the city of Baghdad in 1258. This city was still ruled by the Abbasid caliphs. They refused to surrender to the Mongols. The Mongols take and sack the city. They sack the city and they destroy the great library of Baghdad. They kill the last of the Abbasid caliphs. This is really crucial because it marks the end of a unified leadership of Sunni Muslims for the foreseeable future. From this point onwards, no one else emerges as a leader of the entire Sunni Muslim community. It's as though Catholics had lost their Pope. It's less crucial for Muslims, but it's still very important. So Sunni Muslims no longer have a unified leadership. Shiite Muslims hadn't had unified leadership for a long time by this point. So no unified religious leadership for Muslims from this point onwards, and also the loss of Islamic leadership of education around the world. Remember how I said that Baghdad was this critical, at the time at least, a critical source of education, a place where the wisdom of the great ancient civilizations of the world was stored. And that is destroyed in the Mongol conquests at the time. And as well as destroying the literary and educational capabilities of this society, the Mongols also destroy the irrigation systems in Mesopotamia that have been a part of Western civilization up from its very founding, from the time of the Epic of Gilgamesh and from our study of the Neolithic Revolution. And this means not only is Islam not going to be a leader in Western civilization after 1300, is not going to be at least an intellectual leader and a leader in terms of developing new technologies, but it also means that Mesopotamia and the Middle East, that area that's been so influential, its influence is going to decline in the centuries that follow. What's interesting is that after this period of pretty bloody and intense conquest carried out by the Mongols, there follows a period of peace called the Pax Mongolica. And this is the genius of the Mongols as conquerors. Not only were they amazing generals who could defeat basically anyone they came in contact with, but they were also aware of the possibilities for trade in a large empire. And they encouraged and protected trade throughout Asia during this period. A society that most benefited from this period of peace and trade guaranteed by the Mongol Empire was medieval Europe. This was a society that, unlike the Islamic society to the south, had been spared the worst of the Mongol conquest, but was a society that was increasingly stable and was expanding. And so we start to see European merchants taking advantage of these opportunities for trade to expand into Asia and to trade with the Mongol Empire. And this is really important because it increases an already well-established European interest in foreign cultures and a desire to explore and to expand European influence and European engagement beyond the confines of the Mediterranean. And this is going to be really crucial to the ongoing history of Western civilization. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on in the 14th century in the next video.